All right, my guest today is a recurring guest to the podcast, one of my favorite people in the NFL media. I'm talking about NFL Insider Adam Caplan. What's going on, Adam? How you doing?
Good to be back with my friend. Yeah, we've got, the Bills are a little bit better than I expected, which is always a good thing. And we're seeing a team in the Eagles that the Bills face this week that's worse than people expected, not even close to what most people thought. One of the best rosters in the National Football League, devastated by injury. 8 starters from week 1 did not play last week, so that's really the problem from both sides of football for the Eagles.
Before we talk about the Eagles and the Bills game on Sunday, what, if anything, have you heard about the Bills' possible interest in trading for a wide receiver before the trade deadline? Sano and Sanders got dealt this week. Not sure what might be out there, what might be available right now. I've heard some stuff about A.J. Green. Does that have any teeth? What have you heard?
No, not A.J. Green. I have no idea where you're seeing that, but I don't see it. Historically, the Bengals simply don't trade. GMs have told me they're difficult to deal with because they just don't like it. Mike Brown, the owner, typically sits on players unless he absolutely has to, or it's an ugly situation. Remember Carson Palmer and Corey Dillon got dealt. Both players wanted out, and they got out eventually, but A.J. Green is coming off of ankle surgery. He's still not ready yet. Now, what they need is someone who actually is ready to go and is not coming off surgery. And I do expect them to be aggressive at the trade deadline to get someone, whether it's Robbie Anderson, who unfortunately is in their own division, so I don't know if that's going to happen. But some receiver who could be available. Emmanuel Sanders was the one I pegged to go to San Francisco. That happened. There'll probably be a couple more guys come free when teams lose on Sunday. Some of those teams who basically, Patrick, have to get realistic that they're not going to the playoffs, and some of those players may become available on Monday.
In terms of Buffalo, 5-1 right now, but we really haven't seen them play a lot of tough games. Their lone tough opponent was New England, and the Bills hung tough that game. They were in it late and only lost by a score. Philly will or should be a tougher test than most of the teams they've played this year. What's your take on Buffalo this first 6 games or so, what you've seen from them?
Yeah, they're offensively challenged, which is what I thought would be coming in the season. The offensive line's okay. We knew this is a work in progress because they had 4 changes, so this is going to take time to get it right. But they were very aggressive in free agency. Their depth was okay there. They need help at a receiver. They're just too light there. But overall, offensively, getting Singletary back from his hamstring injury, that's pretty big. I think offensively they just do enough, but their defense is just not only tough, it's so disciplined. They execute everything they do so well in defense that this is why they're in every game, because their defense is going to come to play, whether it's on the road or at home. Not every defense could say that. They seem to get the job done no matter where they play, and I think you got to give them credit. I think overall the Bills are a little bit better than I expected. I was expecting 8 to 9 wins this season. Obviously, they have a chance to do well better than that, maybe 10 or 11 wins if the key players stay healthy. Josh Allen's better, definitely is. He's not there yet. Still runs too much. That coaches always tell me when quarterbacks run, that means they're not a lot. We're talking 8, 9, 10 times a game. That means they're unless they're designed, they're not going through the progressions. They're still going through one and running. But Josh has gotten better. Accuracy is a little bit better. Still not where it needs to be. But we knew this with that area. The accuracy issue was always going to be a challenge for him.
In terms of Josh Allen, he's never thrown for 300 yards in a game so far in his young career. But this week appears to see, have a potential tasty matchup against Philadelphia Eagles secondary that's not playing really well and is banged up. And this could really help out the Buffalo passing game. What's been the issue with the Eagles secondary this year?
Well, the players that have gone, other than Avonte Maddox, who's their slot corner, who won't play this week, he missed significant time due to the injury that he suffered. Andrew Sendejo, their top backup safety, unfortunately ran into him, and he hurt his neck, and he had a concussion, and he's still not cleared yet, so he won't play this week. He had played well before he got hurt, but the corner play has been bad. Now, they did get Jalen Mills, who started in the Super Bowl for them. They got him back. He'd been out closer to a year. He was back last week, did okay. Sidney Jones, a former second-round pick, got benched last week. He didn't play. He was active but never got in the game. That's a problem. Ronald Darby is coming back from a hamstring injury. He was only available in an emergency situation last week, coming back from a hamstring injury, which kept him out 4 weeks. He should be in the lineup this week, and that'll give them the 2 guys who were in the Super Bowl for them Darby, though, by the way, Patrick, has never played to the level that I think the Eagles were expecting. Most of it had to do with the injury, but his problem has never been speed. It's about trusting his eyes. Personnel people tell me around the league that have graded the Eagles tape that before he got hurt, and in the Atlanta game specifically, where he got torched, he just trusts his eyes sometimes, where when you don't trust your eyes, it means you travel the play, and it makes you look slow, and he's certainly not slow. But, again, he was not playing well before he got hurt, and they need him to play well. Rasul Douglas is a kid, third year out of West Virginia. He played very well to start the season. Last few weeks has not played well at all. So they just don't play well on the outside. There'll be plays to be made here for John Brown, who obviously is still a pretty good deep threat. He did score last week on a shorter pass, but he's got that ability. I would expect a shot play or two to John Brown in this game.
In terms of Philly, beyond the secondary, 3-4 overall. They've lost two of their first three early on, but then they won in Green Bay in prime time. They slapped the Jets the following week. Things looked to be back on track, but then last week got pummeled by Dallas on Sunday night. What do you make of this team right now beyond the injuries? They've given up 75 points in the last three games. Kind of an underwhelming season so far for a team that I think many people thought was going to be right up there in the NFC, which is a loaded conference, of course.
Yeah, it's been kind of shocking at how bad it's been. So the pass rush has been poor. That's been another thing. Their linebacker play has been almost deplorable for most of the way. They've certainly had injuries there. They cut Zach Brown a couple weeks ago, who was probably their best linebacker, and was not playing well. Nigel Bradham has been out with an ankle injury. He did not play well before it. So a lot of players underachieving, and then offensively, which we get to in a minute. Carson Wentz has not played well the last 2 weeks. Had been very solid before that. I think it's pressing a little bit, and the big thing you'll see in this game, and it'll probably happen, is the ability for the receivers to get downfield without Deshaun Jackson.
Okay, now with Carson Wentz, how's he look to you? His worst game last week, probably against Dallas. He had 3 turnovers, but the guy is still an MVP caliber talent, at least anyway. What's the confidence level in Philly with him right now? Not just media, fans, and such?
Yeah, I don't really pay much attention to what media is saying about it. I could just tell you what people I trust say. And Carson, the last 2 weeks, Patrick, has really struggled with staring down receivers, holding on to the ball too long. That's a real problem. And his MVP sort of season before he tore his ACL, the one thing he did really well is he threw with anticipation. That means he gets the ball out while the receiver and tight end are in the middle of the route. He's not doing that anymore. He's been holding on to the ball too long. He's waiting for everyone to break open. Can't do that. I get it that they have problems getting downfield, but he's just got to release the football and throw them open. He's not doing that. One player that was doing fantastically well for the Eagles lately is Dallas Goedert, who scored last week. And I know talking to the Cowboys after the game, they were blown away by how Goedert played in that game. They had trouble covering him. He did fumble in the first series, but he's going to he'll be a factor in this game. He and Zach Ertz are a really good tandem. The Eagles really want to get this going. Their offensive line has been very good. Now, Jason Peters probably will not play this week. He's got a knee injury. Andre Dillard, their first-round pick, did okay last week. Not great, but he improved from his first game. We came off the bench. Yeah, overall, I think Wentz he's got to play better. The run game, which I didn't mention, but I'll mention quickly. Jordan Howard's done a nice job coming back from the trade from the Bears. Very, very solid. He's their lead back. They tried with Miles Sanders in week 2. Probably a little bit too early. He was their lead back because he had a great preseason in training camp, and he dropped the ball, so to speak. So when you see him in the game, Cowboy source told me this. He goes, every time we see Ertz and Sanders together, he said it's almost certain they're going to throw the football. So when Sanders is in the game, he probably will be throwing the ball downfield because he's been probably the best deep threat in the NFL at running back so far.
Buffalo is a 1.5-point favorite, even though they're 5-1. Philly's only 3-4. What are a couple of areas where you look at this matchup on Sunday where you think Philly might have a firm edge? You did hit on the tight ends, which was a great point because the Bills have struggled a little bit to cover tight ends, even last week against Miami. And that especially holds true if Matt Milano can't go again, who was limited in practice Wednesday with the groin.
Yeah, I think for the Eagles to win, number one, they can't get behind. They've been behind in almost every game in the first quarter. This has been, other than the effect they were, every game but the Jets game, where they blew out the Jets at home. They've been behind in the first quarter in every game. They've been outscored like crazy in the first quarter. And this has got to stop for them to have a chance. And you know the Bills are so tough at home now because that crowd is so loud. It's one of the better home fields in the league, and the Eagles need to take the crowd out of it. If they get behind, it's going to be a problem because they just don't. They get very predictable. The only thing they're doing now lately that's different is they're committed to the run more. They were way more committed to the run last week than they had been. And unfortunately, though, they still got blown out, and they only scored 10 points. They were down 14-0. Cut it to 14-7, but turnovers, as you mentioned, bad penalties, lack of discipline on defense. Now, I would tell you, though, the reason why I think the Eagles will be in this game and probably win is because the Bills are offensively challenged. And, yes, I know the Eagles' defense has been poor, but they just lack enough help at wide receiver. And, obviously, when you don't trade for a player by Tuesday, then you're going to go with a roster that you have almost certainly entering the game. And the Bills are going to have to figure out a way to get John Brown open, as I said earlier, to open the show here. If they can, they're going to have a chance to have a couple shot plays because the last 2 weeks, the Eagles are giving up so many deep plays, play after play after play. But again, if you got reinforcements like Jalen Mills back, though he doesn't run well, he's very physical, and Ronald Darby, who could run, that certainly could help them.
This starts a killer stretch for Philly. They come in 3-4. They got Buffalo, then Chicago, a bye. Then they're playing the Patriots and Seattle in those 2 weeks that follow. This might not be quite like must win for them on Sunday, but it feels like they're at least flirting with this being a must win game, especially, again, the NFC is much better than the AFC right now this year. Do you kind of feel like this is almost a must win game for Buffalo, or for Philly, I should say, considering what's coming up on the schedule after this too?
Yeah, they do play a slumping Chicago Bears, but you're right. This game, they've got they're home for 3 against Chicago, New England, and Seattle. So that's a killer schedule. Then their schedule gets really, really eases up against a bunch of bad teams.
Yeah, they play all the teams that the Bills have beat so far this year.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. So it's going to be challenging. This should be a low-scoring game. Right now, the long-range forecast looks like it's going to rain on Sunday. We know that could change, but that probably helps the Eagles because the Bills' team speed is really good. In fact, one thing I like to see, and teams have gotten the Eagles a little bit on this, is a screen game with Devin Singletary now that he's healthy because he's way faster than Gore. Gore, obviously, he may be their lead back, but he doesn't have the juice that Singletary does. Now that he's not listed on the injury report, I'd like to see them use the screen game a little bit because the Eagles linebacker core is poor. They're probably one of the worst groups in the league. Until they could prove they can stop a fast running back, I want to see what Daboll has dialed up here. That's one area where I think they can get the job done.
Last question, Adam, then I'll let you go. If Buffalo were to defeat Philly on Sunday, and again, the record isn't so great for Philly, only at 3-4, but everybody knows it. They're still a very talented team. They're a good football team. If Buffalo were to win that, what do you think that does for them in the eyes of the national media or on a national level? Again, Buffalo's 5-1, but they beat Miami, they beat the Jets, they beat the Giants, they beat the Bengals. They haven't beat anybody yet of note. If they're to win this game, NFL guys like yourself, colleagues of yours, people around the league that you know, national media, what do you think this will do for Buffalo in their eyes? You think this will move the needle?
I really only talk to people. Yeah, I only Patrick talk to people in the league. That's all that really matters. So just talking to people in the league and how the Eagles are viewed. They're viewed as a really good football team, a good organization that has dealt with a lot of injuries, but maybe their views on certain players, maybe they were off it a little bit, and maybe their depth in certain areas was not good enough. I think as one team told me when they looked over the roster, their lack of help at linebacker really is an issue. And by the way, this is where if the Bills come in running, which I'm sure they will do to help Josh Allen, the Eagles went from having the NFL's best run defense. Well, they got gashed last week against Dallas because they cut Zach Brown, who's their biggest linebacker physically. They didn't have Najee Bradham, and they are down by the way, they're down 3 defensive tackles. Wait to see what they have playing against the Bills on Sunday. So that people around the league know this. I would expect the Bills to come out running, and they should have some success. All
right, good stuff. Everyone follow Adam on Twitter, Caplan NFL. Listen to him all over. He's all over the place. Thanks as always, Adam. Good to have you on.
You got it, man. Thank you.